Hey guys, tonight we drift into a world where turtles aren't just turtles, where the waves themselves carry secrets and islands don't always sit still. You trudge along a sun-warmed beach, sand slipping between your toes, and out there on the horizon, a colossal turtle breaks the water's surface. Its shell is slick with salt and sunlight, glistening like a polished chestnut. And for a moment, you swear the creature is massive enough to support an entire island. Or at least the legends insist so. You probably won't survive this without a few double takes, but that's the fun part. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments, because why not add a little global perspective as we drift along? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wade into the shallows, feeling the cool caress of ocean water lapping your ankles. Turtles, particularly the green and hawksbill varieties, are revered across Polynesia, and you're not just imagining it when local lore casts them as cosmic carriers, gentle giants hauling landmass on their backs. Historians still argue whether these stories began as cautionary tales, symbolic metaphors, or a literal interpretation of migration patterns, but the allure remains the same. A creature so patient, so enduring, that it might just carry worlds. The mainstream historical fact here is that Polynesians were master navigators, colonizing vast stretches of the Pacific long before Europeans set sail. They relied on stars, winds, and ocean swells, moving with precision across what seems like endless blue. Quirkier tidbits, though? Some elders insist that turtles themselves helped guide their ancestors, carrying tiny fragments of islands across the seas in the earliest myths, almost like natural GPS devices with shells instead of satellites. You can almost feel the shell's ridges under your palm, imagining the moss, barnacles, and miniature palm trees clinging to its back. As you imagine climbing onto that slow, steady carapace, you notice the first glimmer of an island appearing far off, a hint of volcanic rock peeking through the mist. The sun warms your neck, the wind whispers through your hair, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you hear the faint, rhythmic chant of a voyaging song, as if the turtle itself hums a lullaby to keep the islands steady. You smile because, honestly, it's ridiculous, and yet deeply comforting. Remember, that's the magic of these myths. They make you feel both very small and very, very carried. The currents ripple around your ankles, teasing you with whispers of the deep. You trudge farther into the turquoise expanse, water brushing your knees, and the sheer rhythm of the ocean begins to hypnotize you. Polynesian navigators, masters of intuition and observation, read these currents like open books, noting subtle shifts in color, temperature, and the direction of floating seaweed. Mainstream history tells us these currents were crucial highways, natural pathways connecting islands that were hundreds, sometimes thousands, of miles apart. You can almost feel the invisible lines pulling the turtle along, as if some ancient marine GPS is embedded in the waters themselves. Fringe stories suggest that the turtle didn't merely float along. Its shell guided the currents, shaping waves with imperceptible nudges. Elders in some islands still speak of the current turtle, a mythic entity whose gliding back directed the passage of migratory fish storms, and even drifting islands. It's one of those images that makes you squint in disbelief and yet, somehow, want to trace the pattern with your hands, imagining the slow, deliberate rhythm of this enormous beast acting like a living compass. Historians still argue whether these currents were interpreted literally as turtles in early myth, or if they were poetic metaphors for the ocean's invisible hands. You notice a pod of flying fish slicing the surface ahead, glittering silver in the sunlight, and for a fleeting second, you imagine the turtle interacting with them, perhaps nudging schools toward safer waters, or guiding their erratic arcs to map the seas. Somewhere, a coconut drifts past your elbow, as if tossed by a playful trickster god just to remind you of the ocean's whimsy. You chuckle because it's exactly the kind of ridiculous detail that lingers in legends, the small absurdities that make storytelling unforgettable. As your eyes follow the horizon, tiny specks of land appear, faintly rising above the watery blue. The turtle's massive head cuts through the waves, unhurried, and you realize you're witnessing a mythical version of island hopping, an ancient tale overlaying actual ocean science. Early voyagers depended on currents, tides, and stellar navigation, but their imaginations often filled in the gaps. Perhaps they truly envisioned turtles carrying tiny islands like cargo, creating a story that both explained their world and encouraged reverence for its creatures. You take a deep breath, inhaling salt and possibility, knowing that every ripple in the water is a reminder that myths are never purely imaginary. They are a map for the heart as much as for the body. You settle onto the soft curve of a dune, the wind tousling your hair, and let yourself watch the turtle glide steadily ahead. In Polynesian culture, turtles, honu in Hawaiian, to'o in Tahitian, carry profound symbolism. They are guardians, travelers, and embodiments of patience, endurance, and the interconnectedness of life. Mainstream historical records show that turtle shells were often used as tools, ornaments, or even musical instruments. Yet the myths elevate them beyond the mundane into cosmic actors, quietly ferrying islands, souls, and stories across the vast Pacific. You probably won't survive this fact without a sense of awe, because here, utility and legend intertwine in a gentle, mesmerizing dance. Fringe tales suggest that some turtles were actually immortal, spirits manifesting in shell and fin, guiding navigators not only across oceans, but through life's unseen currents. Some elders insist that if you whisper your troubles to the turtle while it glides, the ocean absorbs your worries, returning clarity in the form of calm seas or sudden insight. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were purely spiritual, a form of psychological comfort, or perhaps a coded survival strategy for voyagers facing unpredictable waters. As you picture tiny children drawing turtles in the sand, chanting creation stories about how the first islands rested upon their backs, you sense the rhythm of storytelling itself. Oral histories in Polynesia preserve countless tales of turtles bearing sacred cargo, mountains, forests, even the first humans. In one quirky version, the turtle is said to carry a secret pouch of volcanic soil, sprinkling it wherever islands were meant to grow. You can almost imagine a palm tree sprouting mid-wave, a bird landing to survey the new land, and a fisherman tipping his hat to this slow-moving architect of the sea. You stretch your legs, feeling the sand shift beneath you. And remember that some myths are intentionally contradictory, reflecting the diverse island cultures. In Samoa, the turtle may be a wise elder. In Tonga, a bridge between worlds. In Hawaii, a trickster and guide. These stories, carved into chants, tattoos, and carvings, suggest an understanding of the world that combines reverence, whimsy, and observation. You smile, noting that even in the most practical of societies, humans need their myths. Sometimes a turtle is just a turtle, but sometimes it carries everything that matters. The sun dips lower, casting molten streaks across the waves, and the turtle's silhouette stretches across the horizon like a slow-moving promise. You trudge closer to the water, feeling the chill of late afternoon mixing with the sun's lingering warmth, and watch as myths weave themselves around volcanic peaks, appearing like the first brushstrokes on a blank ocean canvas. In Polynesian stories, the first islands didn't merely emerge from magma and tectonics. They rose upon the turtle's back, patiently carried until their foundations hardened and their palms reached skyward. Mainstream science tells us that these islands are indeed volcanic, a product of the Earth's shifting crust. But the poetic image of a turtle ferrying them through warm cerulean seas remains irresistibly enduring. Quirky local tales embellish this image further. In some versions, the turtle is said to hum lullabies while islands settle, each note shaping the land's contours, a melodic blueprint for hills, valleys, and lagoons. Historians still argue whether these myths arose to explain natural phenomena in a relatable way or were an imaginative pedagogy, teaching children how islands arrived without needing to understand eruptions, lava, or plate tectonics. You can almost hear the gentle strum of an ancient ukulele echoing across waves, carrying these stories from one island to the next. As the turtle glides closer, you imagine stepping onto its back and feeling the subtle sway beneath your feet. Tiny ferns sprout in midair. Volcanic rocks rearrange themselves under invisible hands, and the salty breeze carries whispers of those first voyagers, awed by both the seas and the creatures they relied upon. Some elders recount that if the turtle paused at just the right latitude, the island would settle perfectly aligned with the stars, a celestial anchor for future navigation. You chuckle at the improbability, but recognize the truth in symbolic accuracy. The stories served as mnemonic devices, keeping entire oceanic highways alive in memory. Even as modern geology demystifies the volcanic processes, the myths persist, layering imagination over fact. You notice a curious shell fragment washed ashore, intricate and ancient, and it feels like a relic not merely of nature, but of narrative itself. In that fragment, you glimpse a turtle carrying more than islands, carrying history, belief, and the human need to transform uncertainty into a gentle story that rocks you into awe and contemplation. You step back from the edge of the water, letting the tide tickle your toes, aware that every island you've ever visited, every map you've traced, is cradled by these myths, sometimes quite literally on a turtle's patient back. The evening breeze curls around you, carrying the faint scent of salt and blossoming hibiscus, and you trudge along the shoreline, tracing the turtle's slow, purposeful path. Ancient Polynesian navigators once did the same, though their tracing was more celestial than terrestrial, eyes scanning constellations and the shimmering waves for hidden signs. Mainstream history confirms that oral storytelling was as vital as navigation tools, with sailors reciting intricate tales to encode knowledge about currents, reefs, and distant islands. You probably won't survive these details without marveling at the sheer ingenuity. Every story was both entertainment and survival guide, a careful mix of observation and imagination. Fringe versions of the myth add an almost cinematic twist. Some elders claim that when voyagers spoke to the turtle mid-journey, the waves responded, carrying messages across miles to other turtles or even other islands. You can almost hear it, a deep, resonant hum rising from the shell, blending with the ocean's pulse. Historians still argue whether these anecdotes were literal beliefs, symbolic expressions of oceanic interconnectedness, or just playful exaggerations to make storytelling more memorable. As the turtle glides beneath the pink-streaked sky, you notice small details the stories emphasize. The gentle rise and fall of its shell like a mini topography, barnacles tracing abstract patterns across its carapace, and even the occasional bird resting on its back as if paying homage to this silent, enduring vessel. Polynesian chants, sung to the rhythm of paddles slicing water, often recount these voyages, blending stars, wind, and the imagined presence of turtles carrying not just islands, but cultural memory itself. You can picture a navigator whispering a prayer to the turtle before a storm, eyes narrowing on distant clouds, hoping that the myth's protection extends beyond legend into tangible fortune. The quirkiness of these tales is irresistible. In some accounts, the turtle is said to consult the stars before choosing which island to settle, tilting its massive head ever so slightly to align with celestial markers. And as you step closer to the edge of the water, letting waves lap your feet, you realize that the stories, chants, and whispered prayers were more than superstition. They were a living curriculum, a guide for voyagers across the ocean's vast, unpredictable classroom. You tilt your head back, listening to the hum of the sea, feeling that pulse beneath the turtle, and marvel at how a single mythical creature can carry so much. Land, lore, and the enduring heartbeat of a culture that knows the ocean is both road and teacher. Night drapes itself over the ocean like a velvet curtain, stars blinking faintly above, and you trudge along the wet sand, each footprint washing away almost immediately. Polynesian myths extend beyond turtles ferrying islands. Animals, in general, are cosmic movers. Sharks carve reefs, birds map the sky, and crabs etch trails in sand that mirror constellations. Mainstream history acknowledges that these animals were practical guides for navigation. Observing bird flight patterns or reef behavior could literally save a voyage. But in myth, they become actors in a grand cosmic play, shaping seas and skies alike. You probably won't survive the sheer audacity of imagining a crab orchestrating star patterns, but that's part of the gentle madness that makes these myths unforgettable. Quirky accounts insist that some turtles were capable of carrying not just islands, but miniature ecosystems, complete with plants, animals, and even the occasional wandering human spirit. Elders whisper that each animal has a unique rhythm, and the turtle's slow, deliberate glide harmonizes with winds and tides, ensuring balance. Historians still argue whether these myths arose as symbolic teaching tools or literal attempts to explain the inexplicable movements of islands and animals across vast ocean expanses. You feel the waves gently tugging at your ankles, and it's easy to imagine the turtle's shell as a miniature stage, a floating world of interlocking stories and lessons. You watch the moonlight ripple across the ocean, silver and soft, illuminating tiny fish skimming the surface. Polynesian chants tell of how turtles, sharks, and seabirds communicate with one another, a secret dialogue that guides both natural and human travelers. The idea is both absurd and comforting, a whimsical reassurance that the world is connected in ways beyond immediate perception. Some myths describe the turtle as a silent ambassador, ensuring harmony between land, sea, and sky, negotiating disputes among creatures in a cosmic court whose laws are inscribed in wave patterns and star paths. There's a touch of humor in imagining the turtle holding counsel with crabs, birds, and fish. One tale even claims a mischievous octopus tried to argue against island placement, only to be nudged aside by the wise, slow-moving turtle. You smile at the mental image, sensing how the myths blend reverence and amusement, survival and storytelling. As you stand on the edge of the shore, listening to the gentle clap of waves and imagining this underwater parliament, you realize these stories are a quiet reminder. Every creature has purpose, every wave has meaning, and sometimes the slowest traveler, like the turtle, carries the heaviest, most important cargo. The early dawn creeps in, brushing the horizon with pale gold, and you trudge along the wet sand, watching the turtle glide with imperceptible speed, carrying islands as effortlessly as if they were driftwood. Polynesian myths often describe islands not as stationary masses, but as travelers themselves, drifting lazily across the ocean until they found their rightful place. Mainstream science confirms that islands can migrate over geological timescales due to tectonic activity and erosion. But the poetic image of a turtle ferrying an island across the turquoise expanse captures the imagination far more vividly than any diagram ever could. Quirky accounts amplify this idea. Some stories insist that the turtle occasionally rotated its cargo slightly, allowing volcanic soil to settle evenly or reefs to form in perfect alignment with the sun's path. You can almost picture it nudging an island with a fin, adjusting palm trees like chess pieces, ensuring that every cove and lagoon appears precisely where it should. Historians still argue whether these accounts were symbolic metaphors for navigation techniques, imaginative teaching tools for young voyagers, or literal beliefs held by seafaring communities. Regardless, the mental image of an island slowly drifting on a turtle's back is mesmerizing, grounding the vast ocean in narrative wonder. You notice how the waves lap differently around the turtle, creating tiny whirlpools that mirror the shape of distant islands, as if the creature's presence reshapes the very water. Polynesian navigators might have observed these subtle oceanic patterns and turned them into myths, encoding practical knowledge into stories that delighted and instructed simultaneously. In some fringe interpretations, the turtle's slow rotation even explains shifting tides and the occasional drift of coral reefs, giving the myths a curious, almost proto-scientific quality. There's humor in the idea that the turtle might occasionally get bored, pause mid-ocean, and let an island linger in the wrong direction for a few days, leaving voyagers scratching their heads. You smile, imagining a navigator shouting at the sky, "Hey, turtle, we said east, not northwest." These moments reflect the human tendency to anthropomorphize nature, weaving whimsy into observation. Standing in the soft morning light, feeling the sand between your toes, you realize that these stories are more than entertainment. They are tools for memory, teaching, and connection. The turtle's glacial journey reminds you that patience is a force of nature, and sometimes the slowest travelers leave the most enduring impact. You trudge along the damp shoreline, sea foam tickling your ankles, and notice tiny offerings tucked between rocks, shells, feathers, and even miniature carvings of turtles. Across Polynesia, local rituals honored these gentle giants in ways that can feel delightfully odd to outsiders. Mainstream accounts confirm that many communities held ceremonies invoking the turtle's protection, often at the start of long voyages or during seasonal shifts. You probably won't survive the whimsy of some of these customs without laughing. A shell might be adorned with a feathered crown, or a carved turtle might be fed with sweetened coconut to ensure safe passage. Fringe tales suggest even stranger practices. In a few island traditions, divination involved rolling a small turtle shell across a sand circle, interpreting the way it flipped or spun to predict rainfall, fishing luck, or the birth of future islands. Historians still argue whether these practices were widespread or localized, symbolic or literal tools, but the diversity is undeniably charming. You bend down and pick up a fragment of a painted shell, imagining how it once connected a family to the slow, deliberate wisdom of a turtle gliding beneath the waves. As you step carefully over tide pools, you notice patterns carved in stone nearby, abstract spirals and arcs that echo the turtle's shell. These artistic nods were not merely decorative. They acted as mnemonic devices, encoding stories about island placement, ocean currents, and the creature's mythic journeys. Some elders claim that performing dances or chants in front of these carvings invokes the turtle's presence, creating a bridge between myth and the living world. You smile at the thought of someone centuries ago, barefoot on sand, teaching children cosmic geography through rhythm and gesture. The quirky humor in these rituals can't be overstated. One story tells of a turtle sculpture accidentally dropped into a lagoon during a festival, only for the villagers to claim that it swam home on its own and blessed the harvest. You chuckle, imagining the storytelling sessions that must have followed, children wide-eyed as elders explain the turtle's mischievous autonomy. Standing there, with the tide murmuring around your ankles and shells scattered like cosmic breadcrumbs, you realize that these rituals served multiple purposes. They reinforced social cohesion, honored nature, and kept the myths alive. And perhaps most importantly, they reminded everyone that even the slowest, most patient creature could command reverence, humor, and awe simultaneously. The waves shimmer silver under the rising moon, and you trudge closer to a rocky outcrop where ancient carvings peer from the stone like sleepy watchers. Polynesian art and song teem with turtle imagery, each piece a whisper from the past. Mainstream history notes that tattooing, wood carving, and chants were not mere decoration. They encoded genealogy, navigation knowledge, and sacred tales. You probably won't survive realizing how much information could fit on a turtle's back in story form, but that's the subtle genius of it. Each shell, each line, each chant held memory as carefully as the turtle carried islands. Fringe interpretations suggest that some turtle depictions were not symbolic at all, but literal maps of island routes, their shell ridges corresponding to ocean currents and reef systems. Historians still argue whether this reading is accurate or an overzealous modern projection onto traditional art. You run your hand along the grooves of a carved turtle, feeling centuries of intent and imagination embedded in the wood. The lines twist like miniature whirlpools, reminding you that art in this context is as functional as it is beautiful. As you listen, faintly, to the rhythm of distant chants, the melody seems to mimic the turtle's glide, the rise and fall of waves reflected in vocal cadence. Some songs recount the turtle's journeys, narrating encounters with storms, drifting islands, and migrating birds, while others encode practical advice for fishermen and navigators. You notice how the myths loop back on themselves. A chant about an island resting on a turtle's back mirrors a carving of the same scene, and both reinforce oral histories that might otherwise fade. Quirky versions of these stories abound. In one, a turtle tattooed onto a chief's back was believed to literally channel the creature's patience and wisdom into the wearer, ensuring successful voyages and fair judgment in disputes. You chuckle at the mental image of a chief glancing over his shoulder to admire a very literal, living map etched onto his skin. Standing under the moon's gentle glow, watching waves lap the rocks, you sense how these artistic expressions transform myth into something tangible, touchable, audible, and visual. Each depiction, each chant, each groove on a shell is a bridge to the past, ensuring that the turtle's patient journey and the stories it carries remain alive in the hearts and minds of those who dare to see, listen, and believe. Storm clouds gather on the horizon, darkening the turquoise expanse, and you trudge through the sand as a gusty wind tugs at your shirt. Polynesian myths often link turtles with storms, sacrifices, and superstition. Mainstream records confirm that sailors sometimes offered small gifts to turtles before venturing into turbulent seas, believing the creatures could calm tempests or signal impending danger. You probably won't survive the intensity of imagining an enormous turtle plowing through angry waves while carrying islands on its back. But that's precisely the kind of bedtime thrill we're here for. Fringe tales take it further. In some versions, the turtle's hum, or the resonance of its shell tapping against floating volcanic rock, could ward off hurricanes or redirect lightning strikes. Historians still argue whether these were literal beliefs or imaginative ways to explain natural phenomena. But imagining the slow, deliberate rhythm of the turtle acting as nature's stabilizer is undeniably comforting. You feel the wind whipping through your hair and hear distant thunder, as if the turtle itself is nudging the clouds into order. Quirky rituals accompany these storm myths. In certain island traditions, villagers would create miniature turtle effigies and set them afloat with prayers for safe passage, watching nervously as the little vessels bobbed on waves. Some elders claim the turtles would return in visions, nodding approval or whispering guidance in dreams. You smile at the absurdity, picturing generations of storytellers and sailors weaving caution, reverence, and humor into each tale. These myths weren't merely fanciful. They were psychological ballast, grounding people against the unpredictable ferocity of the ocean. As waves crash and recede, you imagine the turtle adjusting its course, tilting its massive shell to shield islands from pounding surf, somehow preserving both life and legend in its slow, unyielding glide. Some stories describe human observers panicking as storms approach, only to witness the turtle calmly bearing the islands onward, unaffected by the chaos around it. You notice the tiny fragments of coral and shells at your feet, almost like tiny sacrifices left behind by the sea itself, silent witnesses to these ancient beliefs. The tension between natural forces and mythic interpretation is palpable, a reminder that storytelling has always been humanity's way of asserting control over what cannot be controlled. And as the storm rumbles faintly in the distance, you feel a mixture of awe, amusement, and reassurance, recognizing that even amidst tempestuous seas, the slow, patient turtle carries everything forward, steady and enduring. Morning breaks softly, scattering light across the horizon, and you trudge along a tide-smoothed reef where turtles drift lazily between the rocks. In some Polynesian cultures, myths of turtles became instruments of diplomacy, shaping alliances between islands. Mainstream historical accounts show that trade, marriage, and territorial negotiations often leaned on shared stories, with turtles acting as symbolic mediators. You probably won't survive realizing that a creature in a myth could serve as both arbiter and emblem of trust. But Polynesian societies thrived precisely because such shared symbols reinforced social cohesion. Fringe tales take this further. Some stories claim that a turtle once carried emissaries from island to island, silently negotiating the fates of villages before human leaders even arrived. Historians still argue whether these stories were literal beliefs or allegorical tools meant to teach young navigators about negotiation, patience, and the importance of timing. You can almost see the turtle's slow nods as if approving treaties, its shell glinting with the sunrise like a quiet witness to diplomacy and intrigue. You notice the intricate carvings etched into nearby stones, overlapping shells, wave patterns, and tiny canoe shapes, encoding stories of treaties brokered under the turtle's mythical guidance. Oral traditions recount how feasts were shared, debts forgiven, and alliances renewed in the turtle's honor, blending superstition with practicality. Some accounts even describe dancing ceremonies performed atop giant turtle shells, aligning movements with celestial markers to signal the start of negotiations or the blessing of new unions. The quirkiness of these stories is delightful. In one tale, two rival villages argued over fishing rights, only to be persuaded by a turtle that had appeared mysteriously on the sand, nudging markers toward compromise. Elders laughed, children gasped, and a legend was born. Standing among these relics and imagining the slow glide of a turtle mediating human affairs, you realize that myths served as both moral compass and social glue. They reminded everyone that patience, endurance, and the wisdom of the slow moving could guide decisions far better than haste or force. You take a deep breath, smelling salt and coral, and recognize that the turtle's symbolic diplomacy is just another way these enduring legends carry entire worlds of people, culture, and imagination on their steadfast backs. The afternoon sun warms your back as you trudge along a gently curving bay, the ocean stretching endlessly before you. Colonial encounters and modern science gradually reshaped the belief in turtle-carried islands, blending myth with observation. Mainstream history notes that European explorers often dismissed these stories as fanciful exaggerations, yet in doing so, they inadvertently recorded the richness of Polynesian imagination and the practical wisdom embedded in these myths. You probably won't survive the irony. The more they doubted, the more evidence they collected for future generations to decode. Fringe interpretations linger in the islands. Some locals insist that turtles still carry islands, albeit unseen, spirit-bound, or metaphorical, through the Pacific, a secret world just out of human perception. Historians still argue whether these persistent beliefs are a continuation of cultural memory, a symbolic resistance to colonial erasure, or simply a playful embrace of imagination. You watch the water glinting in slow undulations and feel how stories, science, and belief intermingle in every ripple. You notice the way certain islands retain peculiar names and shapes, echoing the mythic narrative of turtle transport. Navigational chants and ceremonial dances, once vital tools for survival, have evolved into cultural performances that honor these legends while entertaining visitors. Quirky anecdotes suggest that during certain tides, turtles can be seen in reflections, carrying their cargo silently, invisible to all but the most attentive observer. You chuckle, picturing tourists pointing at what seems like ordinary water, unaware of the layers of myth beneath the surface. The blending of myth and reality underscores a delicate balance. Science explains islands' formation, currents, and ecosystems, but the myths preserve the human experience of awe, patience, and imagination. You feel the sun softening, waves lapping like a lullaby, and understand why these stories persist. They give shape to uncertainty, provide a compass for cultural identity, and remind you that even when belief meets skepticism, wonder endures. Standing there, toes in the warm sand, you realize that the turtle carries not only islands, but entire worlds of memory, wisdom, and playful curiosity, gliding forward across time as steadfastly as it does across the sea. The sky darkens to a velvety indigo, stars twinkling like scattered gems, and you trudge along the quiet shore, listening to the rhythmic slap of waves against sand. The turtle glides steadily ahead, patient and unhurried, carrying not just islands, but the echoes of countless stories, memories, and whispers from the past. Mainstream history reminds us that Polynesian voyagers relied on oral tradition to pass down knowledge, preserving navigation techniques, ecological understanding, and cultural norms for generations. You probably won't survive realizing that every ripple, every chant, and every carved shell was part of a living network connecting people, sea, and myth. But it's precisely this interconnectedness that gives the tales their enduring power. Fringe accounts add a touch of surreal magic. Some elders claim that the turtle's slow passage through moonlit waters bends time, allowing islands, stories, and spirits to coexist simultaneously, a notion scholars still debate for plausibility and meaning. You watch as a distant flock of seabirds skims the waves, reflecting the turtle's movement in delicate arcs, a living echo of balance and harmony. These stories, blending observation with imagination, reinforce the human impulse to explain, revere, and celebrate the natural world through narrative. Quirky details persist in local lore. In one tale, the turtle pauses beneath a meteor shower, tilting its shell to catch falling stars and sprinkle them over the waves, a symbolic act of renewal and blessing for islands yet to emerge. Historians still argue whether these embellishments were creative teaching tools or literal beliefs. But either way, they create a rich tapestry of meaning and delight. Standing there, toes submerged in gentle surf, you can almost hear the echoes of chanting voices, the soft laughter of children imagining turtles carrying entire worlds, and the deep, steady hum of the ocean itself. The turtle's final glide is a meditation on patience and continuity. Every island it carries, every legend it bears, every ripple it creates extends across time, inviting you to reflect on the delicate interweaving of myth and reality. You breathe in the salty air, feel the sand shifting beneath your feet, and let the gentle rhythm of waves soothe you. The ocean is vast, the turtle is steadfast, and the stories it carries are endless, each one a gentle reminder that wonder travels slowly, deliberately, and beautifully. As the turtle fades into the horizon, you carry with you a sense of calm, reverence, and the quiet thrill of a myth that refuses to drift away completely. The night deepens, and the world softens around you. You trudge slowly, letting your mind follow the faint silhouette of the turtle gliding across endless waters. The waves lap gently, a steady rhythm that mirrors your own breathing, easing away tension like sand slipping through your fingers. Islands, myths, and memories mingle, blurring lines between reality and story, leaving only a soft, warm sense of possibility. You probably won't survive this gentle surrender to imagination without a sigh of contentment. But that's exactly the point. Surrendering lets the stories settle, just as the turtle carries its islands slowly and surely. You let your eyes drift across the horizon, where stars scatter like dust over a calm sea. The chants, carvings, and legends linger in your mind, now quieter, almost like a whisper fading into the night. Even the quirkiest tales, the turtle tilting its shell, catching stars, nudging islands into place, feel familiar and soothing, part of a universe designed to teach patience, reverence, and humility. Every creature, wave, and ripple carries meaning, reminding you that even the slowest movements can leave profound traces. Breathe deeply. Feel the sand beneath your toes, the gentle brush of night air, the soft chorus of ocean whispers. Imagine the turtle continuing its endless glide, carrying stories, islands, and dreams across vast, unseen seas. Let your mind drift with it, weightless and unhurried, leaving behind the clamor of the day. The world is quiet, steady, and vast, and for tonight, you are part of its gentle rhythm. Your thoughts ebb and flow with the tide, and with every exhale, you sink deeper into calm, carried safely on the steady, unwavering back of myth.